Peace. Greetings to you all. It's your brother Naheem, BKA Lord Abba, AKA Mr. Just the Facts. Make sure you hit the like button, family, as you come in. If you are not subscribed to this, our new Be the Power channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell icon next to it so that you may become a part of the notification nation. Shout out to everybody that's in the chat so far. Tonight, we're going to be having a discussion about comments made by Jane Elliott, who made her mark. Why do I hear? Hold on. One second. All right, so Jane Elliott, who made her mark under the pretense that she fights for racial justice and racial equality. We're going to play her words, and we're going to see something. I was on Clubhouse last night, and Sister Connie had a room going. I believe that was Connie's room or Sister Dawn's room, and there were some Jewish people in there. And they didn't understand their paternalistic viewpoint, right? A lot of people, white people, as they're called, they do not understand what is being called white privilege today and how it forms their paternalistic ideals when it comes to our people. I use the term called helicopter parenting, where the overbearing parent tries to govern the child even when the child is in his or her 30s. That parent still feels that he or she, mother or father, should still be in control over this child's life. This has been the life of our people under white supremacists in the United States of America. Some who claim that they do not have a racist bone in their body. So, we are going to touch on this tonight. Bros, did y'all want to speak to anything before we play the video?
Peace. No, I'm anxious to get into this because I listened to it earlier and I found the stuff that she was saying real interesting. Some people raised some very interesting points. If you read the comments on the video, because I was going through the comments earlier, just reading to see what people were saying. One of our sisters posted it on Facebook, and I seen the comments that she made and some of the other people. So I'm interested in playing it, seeing the feedback in the chat for the people who haven't seen it or heard it, and trying to just really jump into it and dissect what it is that she actually said.
Indeed. Brother Logic?
Yeah, same for me. I think this is going to be real educational. I'm glad she actually made the comments she made so that we could take this time out to have an educational moment on her behalf, the BTP way. So yeah, let's just get straight to it.
Okay, cool. All right, let's get into this, because there was a video that appeared on Twitter a few months back, and I was like, what's going on here? She was having a conversation with a brother, and the conversation was going good until the brother brought up reparations. When the brother brought up reparations, the conversation took a left turn, and the brother was providing pushback to her responses. I was like, okay, this chick Jane Elliott, you would think that a person like that, who is an educator, would, from the time that I seen that first video some months back last year till now, would have changed her stance on reparations. Because study, right? That's what study does. It puts us in a different place when we know better. Period. And we know better by, proving ourselves via the information that's available for us. How should this reparations thing look? I received a lot of pushback, and she's going to say something interesting, which y'all are going to see quoted in the title of this video. And I want to give a shout out to Viral Hip Hop News. You know, I know the brothers from back in the day. We know each other personally. I believe we've been on the same streams together a few times back in the days when they first started popping, when they were in the conscious community. They were exposing some of the fraudulent activity of some of the people who were in and still are in the conscious community. These brothers decided that I'm guessing it wasn't worth their time to continue to expose this, and having pushback from the people that they're trying to forewarn about the scam artistry that was going on. So anyway, without further ado, let's play Jane Elliott's problematic stances on reparations. Let's get into this.
How do you feel about reparations for Black Americans and others, you know, that especially in this country that had to deal with the atrocities of, you know, people who classify themselves as white?
Well, let me put it this way. I'm going to lose most of your Black audience now, but this is the way it is. The first modern human beings that came to this continent came from Africa. And the people who are suffering the most from COVID are Native Americans who came from Africa.
We got an ad coming up, so we're going to mute that. But what we're going to do is, you know, she says, and this is what it is, basically, and that's white supremacy, right? I'm going to tell you what it is. She's not prefacing that as that's my opinion. This is what it is. So let's continue.
Now, if you're going to give reparations, we better start giving reparations to the people whom we raped, killed, murdered in various ways, and whose land we took. Let's start there. I'm all for reparations from there. Want to give them back the land? I don't think you want to. I don't think you would stand for that for an instant. But and you need to realize that they were the first Americans. We called them Indians because Columbus and other people didn't know where the devil they were. So they thought they were West Indies. They must be Indians. They weren't Indians. They aren't Indians. They'll never be Indians. They were from Africa, as we all were. So if we're going to start with reparations, let's make reparations to the first people, the first Black people who came to this continent. Let's start with those people we call First Nations, because they were the First Nations. I doubt very much that there are unless you're in prison, and that's our new form of slavery in this country, is the prison industrial system. You know it as well as I do. But if you aren't in prison, you're probably not being enslaved, and you're probably not living on a dirt floor without any electricity, without any running water, without any central heating or cooling or air, and 100 miles from a hospital. But there are lots of Native Americans who are living in that very situation. And now somebody's going to say, we gave them the land. We gave them a postage stamp size of the land. We did not give them anything. We stole from them and gave very little back. If you're going to do reparations, let's do reparations for those folks first. I'm all for that. And I know now that that'll make a whole lot of people of color angry. But you have to, if you're gonna try to repair this situation, you better start where the worst damage has been done.
And what about the descendants of slavery?
I think the descendants of slavery deserve some kind of reparations, but I think the descendants of the First Nations deserve some kind of reparations too. And I think you can't do it for one without doing it for the other. And which one are you going to start with? Because you see, we tried to enslave Native Americans, but they would run away and get into the nearest village, and we couldn't tell which one, we couldn't tell them apart, so we couldn't tell which ones we had tried to enslave, and they got away. So we didn't start slavery with Black people, what we call Black people in this country. We started it with Native Americans. And we also brought indentured servants here from other countries to act as servants until they had worked long enough to pay back what it cost to bring them here and what they should have been paid while they were working. So that slavery didn't begin with people from Africa in this country. It began with first with Native Americans, then with white folks, then with people of color, then with Africans.
We hear the word reparations being thrown around a lot, particularly in politics. And it looks like, I guess somebody got some information that Black people in America are looking for some reparations, because now we see that conversation. Well, would you offer it? Would you offer it? Would you offer it? Do you realistically see any type of reparation given to anybody in this country as we see it?
I think if you can prove that your people were one of those, was one of the families or a member of the family that was used unfairly, was enslaved, then that's one thing. But if you can't prove that, then that's another thing entirely. And I think practically every Native American in this country could prove it.
How would we
Because their
prove?
names. Well,
How
they've
would
got the. You can go through the. What?
I'm sorry to cut you off. How will Black Americans prove that if records and things were destroyed and we don't really have any actual proof of that? How would we prove that?
Catch the live news, sports, and shows you love.
Yo, can we jump in a
85
little
top
bit
channels.
through this commercial break?
YouTube TV.
Your mic's mute,
Yep.
Evan.
Yeah, you muted.
Yeah, did y'all want to jump in now or
Man,
wait till
yo,
she answer this question?
Yeah, she's almost done. You might as well
Okay,
let her
all right,
finish.
okay,
and
okay.
Yeah,
text me or
let's
something.
just yeah.
This is
Mhm.
so bad, man.
This
All
is
right.
horrible. This is
All right.
horrible.
I don't know, and neither do you. But you can't prove it by just the fact that your skin is very dark, because there are a whole lot of people who came here not enslaved, who came with very dark skin. And there have been a whole lot of people come to this country without coming here as slaves.
So my question would be, what's your motive? What was your motivation for teaching?
All right, we can stop there.
Okay, that was
Let's stop
yeah.
there. Let's stop there. This was brutal. This was absolutely brutal.
Yo, this really just highlights like the ignorance, like white ignorance in this particular space. She said so many things that were just wrong. Not like, it was just so wrong. I don't understand how she's a respectable educator in an academic space or any kind of serious space with the type of statements that she made on this interview here. This is just altogether just completely terrible. I mean, I know we want to get into some of the claims she made. I know Ali got some stuff, man. But this was completely terrible, man. I'm gonna get into it, but go ahead.
Oh yeah. Ali, you got two screens up. I think Ali is having some issues.
I mean, well, for one, let's deal with the first issue she said, right? I don't know if she's completely ignorant of what's going on through history, but when she says, right, before we even deal with the identity concept of Native Americans, let's just talk about these myths that they tell, that America stole the Native Americans' land, the United States did this and that they haven't gotten anything. She said something else that's crazy, that she said none of us, she doubt that any of us are sleeping without electricity, that are not sleeping on any floors. Like, you have you ever been to the projects? Have you ever been to any of the economically, like, have you ever been to the hood? Like, what are you talking about? Like, people like me, my cousins, we grew up like that. What are you talking about, Jane?
Yeah, go ahead, Ali. And I want to play something. Go ahead, Ali.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, the brother Logic is on point here. We're talking, I mean, you can go to any hood USA, New Orleans. You can go to Georgia. You can go, different places in Georgia. Los Angeles has a major homeless problem right now.
She said nobody's sleeping. No, like black
That
people are
forget the
not sleeping on dirt floors.
Yo, she
well,
said
she's
that
sleeping
black
on the
people don't
concrete.
have
Like,
central air. Like, you know how many people don't have central
uh,
air? Like, that was horrible.
yeah, man. I
Let-
mean, listen, right here
Mhm.
in New York City, man, you got a homeless issue. You got the homeless issue in Los Angeles, like I mentioned, like it's a major problem in Los Angeles. All over the country, you have homelessness and poverty as a problem for Black Americans. Have always had it. Always had it. I don't, what she's talking about is fallacious. To think that poverty is something that's unique to Native Americans is insane.
It's
But you can
absolutely
play what you want to play.
ridiculous. And like, there's so many things wrong. It's hard to even find out where to start. But one super problematic point that she like highlighted was that, she created this narrative that nothing's ever, like, nobody, they, all these atrocities happen to these native nations and they never got anything, and we need to do something for them. So she must don't know that all about all of the treaties that were given to the Native Americans with these agreements where the Native Americans got monies, they got agreements, they got a whole bureau of Indian affairs. You understand? And then not only that, this whole narrative, we dealt with it before when we were scalping Chief Top Clown and his pretendians about this narrative that America stole somebody's land. If you go do the proper history, you'll see that all of these different nations, and it's documented well, they sold their land to America. Sold it. America didn't take their land. They sold their land to the United States of America, right? Because guess what? They were nations that were recognized, and they fought wars with another military power, and they lost. They got treaties. They have a bureau where they have redress agency, and they do all kind of things. Some nations have fared better than others, but at the end of the day, that's just how that cookie crumbles when government to government business. Everything is not the best, but you can't say we need to do more for them, or like you just ignore all the stuff that has been done for them and say, until we do for them, we can't do for us. You can't say for us. And who the fuck is she, Jane Elliott, to tell us when it's time for us to construct our justice claim and when it's time for us and who needs to come? That type of disrespect. I don't know who these brothers were interviewing her, but that type of disrespect from someone like her is zero tolerance for that. She lost her damn mind. Who are you talking to, Jane? You don't get to tell us, y'all niggas, that's basically what she said. Y'all niggas
Yep,
need to wait till we fix the Indians. And
that's
when we
right.
fix the Indians and we're done fixing the Indians, we'll get to you niggas.
All right, let's start here. Because you're right, Ali. There's so much stuff to start from, but I want to start with the claims that she implies without directly saying that blacks in America are okay. It's the Native Americans who are poor, and it is they who are sleeping on dirt roads and dirt, dirty floors, et cetera, et cetera. So let's run through a little bit of this video right here. This was published 10 years ago, and this is America. This is the United States of America. This video was published 10 years ago. So let's play this.
Last March. Up until then, for 3 years, I was using it in a bucket, putting it through the road. There's 2 buckets back there now, still full, because I just got sick of hauling feces. And then these people gonna leave me to live like this?
Is the audio still playing?
Yeah, I think it's just muted.
Oh, okay.
But I got to try to do some more paperwork.
Mm-hmm. So where do you get the water to clean the dishes?
Let me show you. Step down right here.
I need to hold my hand, please.
Okay. Oh my God. This is where I get the water from.
Oh.
It's ran from outside. Okay. And I bowled a hole down in there. I hooked the vacuum cleaner hose to that to run outside. And then what I do is I boil the water in this pot right here. Okay, and I got the plug right there. What a plug. You see the plug? The plug right there, and I fill this over water, and I let the water boil, and then I pour it in here. But now this is my sink too, and I pour the water in here, the hot water, and then I put some cold water in it. But now my toilet, somebody rigged it up for me, but I've got pictures of my toilet before I had a toilet last year, and it's rigged up. I had a bucket sitting under a chair right here because I just got this toilet, but you can't put no tissue in it because it's just rigged up, and I put the tissue in there. But this is the thing. The reason these people were supposed to rebuild my house. Excuse me.
In America.
This is the brand new roof.
In America.
Brand new roof. Look at that.
The sister that's interviewing her is
I'm in
crying.
bed, so I had fixed up the bathroom when I first came over here.
This is man, I can't even watch no more. It's making me, it's making me angry. This thing is making me angry. Like, what the hell is Jane Elliott talking about? That was published 10 years ago. I've seen so many videos like that when it comes to our people. You see, the stuff that she was saying, it didn't make any sense. This was a continuation of slavery. So it is our hopes that Jane Elliott will see this video, that the people that watched that interview will see this video to get an understanding that you talking about make the Native Americans whole. Let's go to this article right here from the Smithsonian. How Native American slave holders complicated the Trail of Tears, right? And it says, when you think of the Trail of Tears, you likely imagine a long procession of suffering Cherokee Indians forced westward by a villainous Andrew Jackson. Perhaps you envision unscrupulous white slaveholders whose interest in growing a plantation economy underlay the decision to expel the Cherokee, flooding in to take their place east of the Mississippi River. What you probably don't picture are Cherokee slaveholders, foremost among them Cherokee Chief John Ross. What you probably don't picture are the numerous African-American slaves Cherokee owned who made the brutal march themselves or were shipped in mass to what is now Oklahoma aboard cramped boats by their wealthy Indian masters. And what you may not know is that the federal policy of Indian removal, which ranged far beyond the Trail of Tears and the Cherokee, was not simply the vindictive scheme of Andrew Jackson, but rather a popularly endorsed, congressionally sanctioned campaign spanning the administrations of 9 separate presidents. Why in the world are we talking about giving Native Americans something? How much land? She said, if we got to give them the land because the land is something that was taken from them and they didn't really get their land back, right? So let's pull this up real quick. Quick search. Bureau of Indian Affairs FAQs, frequently asked questions. Let me blow this up a little bit more. Approximately 56.2 million acres are held in trust by the United States for various Indian tribes and individuals. There are approximately 326 Indian land areas in the U.S. administered as federal Indian reservations. These people got land. They were just awarded half of Oklahoma. Let me pull up something else.
That's a fact, brother.
Let me see if I could find this article. Let me see.
Man, this is absolute nonsense from Jane Elliott, man. It's just more white excuses on why we can't do reparations we can do reparations for everybody else except for the sons and daughters of Freedman. So she just completely omitted like she's talking about with no one was murdered and raped like the Native American? Are you
Oh
kidding?
my God.
You kidding me?
Oh my God.
There
Like,
was
what are you
there's
talking about?
my bad, y'all. There's another article which shows the Obama administration giving these Native American tribes, certain tribes, over 400 million. All throughout, there's this specificity for Native Americans. You'll know white supremacy by the code that they stay on, right? There is a racial code that undergirds white supremacy. So where else did we hear this claim that Native Americans should be included? From Joe Biden, the head segregationist himself. Joe Biden wants reparations for blacks to include Native Americans. This is why we critiqued Ice Cube's contract with Black America, because somebody wrote in it that Native Americans need to be included. Native Americans have casinos. Native Americans have a lot. When our people got land, you know what we did with it? We built the Greenwood section of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And what happened to that land? It was razed. It was ravaged. It was burnt down. My grandmother tells the story of how my great-grandfather was so successful in South Carolina, so successful that the racists burnt the whole farm down, burnt the animals alive. Callie House, not Callie House, Fannie Lou Hamer, and telling her story, speaks about how when they had land and they were successful, the racists, what was that, Mississippi, poisoned her animals. The animals died off. Half of her stock. This is what happened to racist America. And when the Indian, the Native American, had slaves of our ancestors, the Europeans here was trying to find a way to make them white people in the United States of America. So what in the world is Jane Elliott talking about? How do you come to these conclusions that we have to look out for the Native Americans first? This sounds no different than them crazy Moors that we used to debate that said that America needs to pay reparations to the slaveholders before they pay reparations to us. Compensated, man. This is buffoonery. Yeah, go ahead, Brother Ali.
Hey man, you're on fire. You're on point. And I'll say this: the brother Elijah touched on something, and we touched on it on another program. This land that they're talking about, particularly the lands that was occupied by the so-called 5 civilized tribes of the southeastern region of the United States, that land is land that they either sold, lost in war, or negotiated away through treaty. I think that's very important that people understand that that's what happened with these so-called civilized tribes, who were only called that because they adopted the ways of Europeans and took our ancestors as slaves of their particular tribes. So we gotta always keep that in mind. And I know all of our people are intelligent and informed, the ones who are here with us. All of us know this, but this needs to be documented and needs to be continuously said, because so many people are caping for these Indians without actually knowing the history of how our people were forced to interact with those particular tribes, right? And so that's important. Even when you're talking about the Greenwood section of Oklahoma, yes, our people were forced on the Trail of Tears with them out there. And the Greenwood section was a section of Oklahoma that one of the brothers bought, right? So somebody had raised the point that, well, the Indians gave you black people land out there in Oklahoma because, Black Wall Street was built on Indian land. Yeah, but you got to understand something. The guy who built up that area, he bought that land. He bought that land. That wasn't something that was given to him.
That's right.
Or to the people that were there. He bought that, and they built up on that thing with their work and their ingenuity and made that place into what it was before the Europeans destroyed it. So you know, all of this, we're not trying to play no oppression Olympics or anything like that, but she's wrong in that area. Another area where she was wrong, and I just wanted to raise this point, is that she says slavery started in this country, right? Well, she's wrong with that, because if we're going to be technical, the country didn't start until 1776, right? But I understand what she's trying to say, right? So she says slavery started in this country with the Indians, right? The problem is the very people who came to this country and started to ultimately enslave the Indians had already been enslaving West Africans since the mid 1400s. Those same Spaniards and Portuguese that came to the Americas and started enslaving Indians had already been enslaving Africans. And when they came here, they brought enslaved Africans with them. So no, it did not start with Indians in this, even in this country, because when they came, they brought enslaved Africans with them. So she's wrong on that front.
That's right. That's right. And see, this is why it is so important for us to be here in these days and times, because people take a woman like Jane Elliott as influential. And we have to push back on this Indian stuff, because a lot of these pretendians, as we call them, Black people that want to be Indian, that want to bypass the fact that they have slave ancestry, because that's what happened in this country with our people. They also don't realize that they give closet racists like Jane Elliott a leg to stand on. So let's show some more. Now, this is from Indian Country Today. 20 billion total U.S. support for American Indians. Ever wonder how much assistance the federal government allocates to American Indian tribes and communities each year? This is 2015, $20 billion, family. This is what you call specificity. Let's go to something else. Like we're not playing here. We're gonna make sure that we show people that these people should not be allowed to ever speak for us at all. This is during the Obama administration. U.S. government to pay $492 million to 17 American Indian tribes. Again, specificity. When it comes to us, there can't be no specificity. You get people, closet racists like Jane Elliott, saying, well, we can't fix Black people who are broken, who have been the most broken people in the United States of America until we fix these. See, people like Jane Elliott, they don't know these facts right here. They don't know how much the government.
And peep this. Peep this. This is what's really crazy. Indian is a racial classification in the United States. It's a racial. If you could, brother, real quick, pull up Federal Directive 15. I just want us to look at this real quick.
All right. Okay. Let's let me run through this one more thing.
Go ahead.
And we're going to pull that up. Shout out Sister Cynthia. She sent me this just real quick. This is a historical timeline of reparations payments made from 1783 through 2021 by the United States government, states, cities, religions, yada, 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 yada. 1700, let's start here, 1900 to 1949. 1924, the Pueblo Land Acts of 1924. The Pueblo Land Boards, the Congress authorized the establishment of the Pueblo Lands Board to adjudicate land title disputes, along with the payment of $1.3 million to the Pueblo for the land they lost. $1.3 million in 1924. That a dollar then is worth about $13 today, family. 1927, the Shoshones paid over $6 million for land illegally seized. 1934, Congress passed the Indian Reorganization Act, which authorized $2 million a year in appropriations for the acquisition of land for Indians, except for the state of Oklahoma and the territory. Certain tribes just got half of Oklahoma not too long ago. Half of Oklahoma not too long ago. 1946, Congress created the Indian Claims Commission to hear fraud and treaty violations, yada, yada, yada. 1950, the Navajo Hopi Rehabilitation Act was passed, authorizing an appropriation of $88,570,000 over 10 years for a program benefiting the Navajo and the Hopi. You mean to tell me that we got to fix a people that received and received and received while we're getting poorer and poor? Have you been to Los Angeles, Jane Elliott? Have you seen the homeless population there, Jane Elliott? Like, we got to be real, man. We really have to get real with this thing, family. Yeah, I'm gonna pull up Federal Directive 15 right now, bro. This thing get you a little get me a little heated, because you could hear the racism. She's making up excuses. She's saying that we're all African, but we can't do nothing from the dark fork. Just listen to her. And she said, well, we really can't do nothing for the dark-skinned Africans until all the light-skinned Africans get taken care of first. This is basically what she's saying. She said that we don't know who was enslaved. Look at how dumb she thinks we is. She says we can't know who were the enslaved people, who would get reparations. The same white supremacist talking point. We know, every one of us can pull up our ancestry, and damn near most of our ancestry is going to go back to slavery. The records are going to go back to at least the time that we were freedmen in the United States of America. Because you hit that wall of, 1860, Ali?
1870.
You hit that wall of 1870, right? And she says, your audience is going to be, people of color are going to be angry with me. But aren't we all Africans, Jane Elliott?
Right.
Aren't we all? I don't understand. We cannot keep. This is why, let me say this. This is why that language, descendants of slavery, to me has become problematic. And the brothers that's conducting the interview, they're trying to be specific, right? So we can't fault them for that, because they may not be well versed in that. And I hope the brothers hear this. Bring BTP on the platform. Let's chop it up and build. I know some brothers, they feel like their platforms are so big, they don't want to give nobody else no clout off of their clout. And some brothers think like that. I don't know if these brothers think like that, but it's something that I have experienced since I've been in the conscious community. And what she's trying to do is create an impossible criteria. And then creating an impossible criteria, she's saying that, well, the natives can prove who they are, but you can't. So you shouldn't receive anything. Stay poor, stay homeless, stay broken, etc., etc., etc. This is ridiculous, family. This is absolutely ridiculous. We got Brother Josh. We're going to run through this real quick, Josh, and then come through and give your measure and your take on Jane Elliott's problematic reparations stamp. What you want to go through on this, Ali?
Is a racial classification, right? And I wanted to show you and point out to the family that it's very important to understand that when they say reparations will be unconstitutional, like I'm looking at this particular lawsuit called Richmond versus J.A. Croson Company. It's a United States Supreme Court case that was done in 1995, where it talks about reparations for slavery will be just such an improper remedy in terms of it, because remedies that are ageless in their reach into the past and timeless in their ability to affect the future would be considered unconstitutional according to this particular Supreme Court case, right? So I know the family has heard different people making the argument that reparations for slavery will be unconstitutional. But understand something, because they don't want it. They're saying that race-based things too would be making race-based laws is unconstitutional. But there is some law that undergirds the government paying billions and millions of dollars to Indians, which is a racial classification according to Federal Directive 15, and that's the reason why I wanted you to pull it up, because I wanted the family to see that according to the United States government, Indian is an actual racial classification, and those different nations or tribes of people fall underneath as subdivisions of that racial classification, just like we have different ethnic groups underneath the so-called black racial classification. There's different ethnic groups underneath the white racial classification. Indian is right at the top. See, American Indian. So the American Indian it's not specific to Cherokee or Choctaw or Chickasaw or whatever the case is. Those would be ethnic or national or whatever you want to call them, ethnic classifications. But this Indian thing is a racial classification, and they have no problem doing reparations legislation on behalf of this race of people called Indians in the United States.
Facts.
None whatsoever.
People need to understand. People need to understand what's going on. And Ali, you make an excellent point in pulling up Federal Directive 15, because this is viewed as a racial classification. People like Jane Elliott don't know what they're talking about. Her views and sentiment echoes those of Bill Maher. This is the fox. These are the foxes that Malcolm warned us about, where he spoke about the Republicans being wolves. They're just ready to eat you with gnashing teeth, letting it be known, while the fox is always smiling, friendly enough so that you can walk up and pet it. But then, as the animals that they are, turn right around and eat you. And Jane Elliott is one of these foxes. Bill Maher is one of these. When you hear white folk, as they're called in America, based on these racial classification systems, say these things, understand that they are the foxes, and they seek to devour you as well. They make a bag, particularly in the case of Jane Elliott. They get money off of our struggles and our suffering. You want to cancel somebody, cancel culture? Cancel this chick. Cancel her. She needs to be canceled, period.
She's basically telling Black Americans that you shouldn't even seek justice until the Native Americans get justice. You shouldn't even be looking for it. So justice doesn't necessarily have to come from the legislative bodies. Justice can come from the judicial branch of government. So you shouldn't even be doing that. Like George Floyd's family, who just got was awarded $20-something million. They really, we was talking about this earlier, Josh. They really shouldn't even have gotten that money, because the fact of the matter is the Indians haven't gotten their land back. So George Floyd's family wrongfully got that money. They need to give it back.
It's crazy, right? And let me read this real quick, Josh, before you come on. Just real quick. In 2001, the Oklahoma legislature passed, and Governor Keating signed a bill to pay reparations for the destruction of the Greenwood, Oklahoma community in 1921 in the form of low-income student scholarships in Tulsa, an economic development authority for Greenwood, a memorial, and the awarding of medals to the 118 known living survivors of the destruction of Greenwood. Medals, family. Medals. This is what the like, what medals? Think about what I've read. This is coming from that same exact site on America Paying Reparations. They are awarding medals to the 118 known living survivors of the Tulsa massacre. Reparations. While Indian Americans, I've started this list. I mean, I could have started at 1783. Got millions and billions, maybe possibly even, no, I wouldn't even say possibly, trillions of dollars if you use the inflation calculator for the dollars of yesteryear and today. And you add all of that stuff up, I am pretty certain I have already seen trillions of dollars. Come on, family. People like Jane Elliott must be silenced, and our own voices must grow louder and louder. So I pray in my brother O and the other brother, I think his name is Solomon or Suleiman. I hope they come across this video. It's time for us to build so that when we have these people on these platforms, we know the questions to ask them. Read Dr. Darity's book, Dr. Darity and A. Kirsten Mullen's book, From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century. Now you're prepared to give pushback, because we can't just be quiet for the sake of being quiet, because we just had an interview last week where this guy we had on, and yes, we deleted. For those that wonder what happened to that interview, I straight deleted it after it was over. I don't like sucker stuff. I don't like it coming from whether you young or you old. Sucker stuff is sucker stuff. So we deleted it. Where this guy was talking about reparations shouldn't be in the form of money. It should be in the form of financial literacy. We don't need no money, because the only thing we're going to do with the money is go give it right back, and a whole bunch of other nonsense that don't make absolutely no sense at all. But go ahead, brother Josh.
Josh still on? I think
Oh,
he might have fell off. Oh,
Yeah,
there he
Yeah,
is.
my
Okay,
bad. I switched to my laptop. Peace, family. Yeah, I just gotta say, Jane Elliott is, I try when I listen to the clip. And I don't know if y'all played it, but I would advise everybody to go listen to the clip. First I gotta say I appreciate where she, I appreciate what she did in terms of that brown eyes, blue eyes experiment video. Throughout the years, I thought that was good stuff. But when it comes to things that actually make a difference in terms of changing the power dynamics of America, that's not a step that a lot of them think, well, wait a minute, that may be a step too far. When you change in the power dynamics of America, I don't think a lot of those same people who are okay with doing civil rights and giving you the same rights and giving you the same, trying to talk about even playing field, those people get uneasy when it comes to changing the power dynamics. And I think part of that may be dealing with the white guilt and what's going to happen when these Negroes get in power and they understand what we did to them. Are they going to try to do the same thing to us if they have the power to? So these are some things that I think that go through the minds of individuals who are willing to only go far enough to where you stop the very vicious and physical and upfront and in your face type of racism, while trying to maintain the power structure where we are perpetually at the bottom and remain powerless, or lacking enough power to put us on equal footing so we can be real Americans, in the country that we built. And so I would say to that, when you look at what she's going to talk about, and if I'm redundant, let me know, guys, because
No, go ahead. We talking about it, and you missed the first part of it, but we did play the clip. So no, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, when I think about saying Native Americans need to come first, that's always the dodge, that's the go-to dodge of saying I don't want to see. Another thing is too, I know she talked about her relationship with her father and how she got her father to see things, but there's also, I'm sure she has other relationships that she does not want to disrupt, or maybe perceive to disrupt, by going far and saying, yes, Black Americans who descend from the hard institutions of chattel slavery deserve to get trillions of dollars to repair the damage that was done. And let's say this. Let me just say this. I'll listen to the opinions of economists and historians before I listen to opinions of educators, of middle school teachers, and maybe child psychologists and all that kind of stuff when it comes to reparations, and understanding what that's going to mean for us socially and politically. You're not qualified to say what justice I deserve to get and I don't deserve to get.
That's right.
Who gave you that authority? Like, how did you think you can get to this space where you can deny if you can see something
Whiteness.
like Jesse Lee Washington get burnt to a crisp in front of a huge crowd of white people,
That's
including
right.
lawmakers, and you want to
That's right.
tell me that we gotta wait for some Native Americans? Well, first of all, Native American, I don't know if y'all said this, but Native American is not a group. That's not a group. That's not a group. You know what a group is? Cherokee. You know what a group is? Choctaw. You know what
That's right.
Chickasaw. These nations who have their own treaties, they don't move as a block. When it's reported to you as like they're moving as a block, but that's not how legislation is trickled down to them. How it's trickled down to them. Go back to 1866 when the Confederates lost the war and the 5 civilized tribes had some of our people enslaved, our ancestors enslaved. They hadn't released them yet. The United States government went in and negotiated separate treaties with these various tribes. They didn't have one Native American treaty. They had the Chickasaw Treaty, Choctaw Treaty, Seminole Treaty, the Creek Treaty, and the Cherokee Treaty, right? And others. But there was no Native American treaty. There was no Native American treaty. So you can't tell me Native Americans who released slaves after Alabama.
She didn't say Native Americans.
South Carolina.
No, she using the
She said First Nations. She said First Nations.
First Nations.
Well, I don't know if y'all talking about this, but let's talk about it, right? We're talking about America, reparations via the United States of America. If you're talking about the First Nations, first of all, you gotta declare who are these First Nations. You got to declare who are the First Nations. We're not talking about reparations for white guilt.
She said they were Africans, Josh. The First Nations were Africans.
Yeah, because we all came from Africa.
Well, in that's the case, Europeans came from Africa. So that just throw that out the window. But if we're talking about, we're not talking about reparations to appease white guilt, or you're dealing with white guilt because okay, we know European Americans did this to this Indian tribe or Native American tribe, whatever term you like to use. We did this to them. Then okay, before we get to y'all Negroes, because according to our history, British timeline, 1619, we was doing them dirty before that. Well, we're not talking about 1619. We're talking about, now we can get into the Spanish and the Portuguese coming over here with African slaves, because they done dominated. I don't know if you got into it already, Ali, but they done dominated. There was the Inquisition, and when they reclaimed power back in Europe and Spain, Portugal, Italy, etc. And the people who were defeated, they took as slaves, and that was right around the time when Columbus discovered America, purportedly. Now, when they came to America, they came with Africans. Those Africans were in enslaved status, all through the 15th to 16th centuries and after, right? So the first people that they had that enslaved was people that they brought over here as slaves, not people that they enslaved after they got over here. So they want to talk about the first people that was done dirty. It was the people that was done dirty that they brought over here, right? So, but that all that is out the window. We're talking about America. With America, America started when our people were in chains, you know? So our claim is with America. It's not, so you can't say somebody get to go before me, because when America, day one, July 4th, 1776, we still had people in chains. They didn't emancipate. They declared independence from the British Crown, but they didn't emancipate all the enslaved. They didn't liberate us. So our claim starts, if you want to say the Native American in America, their claim is first. How was their claim first when both groups was done dirty from the jump with America? So if you want to say, if anything, we both started the same date, July 4th, 1776. Don't put nobody in front of me. That's just a dodge to get around having to deal with the political backlash of being a reparationist. Either you're a reparationist or you are anti-reparationist when it comes to U.S. freedmen, period.
Exactly. So, I mean, you know, there was so many other problematic things that Jane Elliott said. And, you know, when you've been dealing in certain intellectual spaces, whether it's hard to say the conscious community is necessarily an intellectual space, because it's really like a free for all when it comes to actual credible information. But those of us that study logical fallacy, those of us who study white supremacy in and of itself can hear it. It is blatant. Even when it's subtle, it is blaring. It is blaring. So when I listened, I could hear the maneuvering that white supremacists do. And it's sort of like what Tucker Carlson does in his slot on Fox News. He is the most openly yet subtly racist person maybe on that platform. And when you're trained to hear it, it bothers you. Because the only reason why you invite Jane Elliott to be interviewed in the first place is due to the mistaken belief that she somehow represents our people because she did a blue-eye, blonde hair test back in the, what was that, the 60s, the 70s, whatever it was. Highly successful. It highlighted the the ontology of how racism is developed in American society starting from birth. She highlights that. The problem is she learned no real lesson from it. Because if she had, she could not make the claims that she's made. I want to go back to what I said real quick about Clubhouse last night when I was schooling these three Jewish guys that came on the platform. And I walked through Genesis 9:25 through 27. And the reason why I went there, because they thought that what they were saying was some form of progressivism. They didn't understand that what they were saying was just more forms of white paternalism, helicopter parenting. Y'all gonna always hear me use that term. So I went to Genesis 9, chapter 9, verses 25 through 27. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servant shall he be unto his brethren. I gave reference to the papal bulls, the Romanus Pontifics, the Ilias Qui, the Dum Diversas, right? I gave reference to these particular papal bulls, which were designed to subjugate the Moors, i.e., the descendants of Canaan. The descendants of Canaan. I read from Alexander Stevens' secession speech. Alexander Stevens was the vice president of the Confederacy out of the state of South Carolina, where he said, due to the fact that the Negro are the descendants of Canaan, servitude is what is best fit for them because their good book says so. And I had to drive that home to these Jewish guys so that they could understand that the thing that undergirds their prejudice, they're blinded by because it's so baked into their psyche from their parents and their parents and their parents' parents and parents' parents. Jane Elliott said her father was a racist. Her father was a racist. Any white person that claims to be for progress of black people and are against reparations, listen to them, hear them out, and you'll hear the fact that they're racist, something that Jane Elliott already admits. She says all white people are racist. So
that's some confession.
Yes.
And that's what what she's saying falls in line with the ideology behind our breakdown of saying that everyone who identifies as white is a devil, right? And remember, y'all, those of y'all who heard our breakdown of it know that we weren't speaking about it from any biblical perspective. We weren't calling them, some beast in the center of the earth or anything like that comes with the mythology and the Bible and the biblical narratives. We were speaking specifically from the perspective of the actual connotative and denotative meanings of the words devil and Satan and what that means in terms of our relationship to people who have been classified as white in this country and they who have classified our people as blacks and Negroes and coloreds and Ethiopians and etc. Right? These are the things that they called us, and based on these racial classifications, they use these to identify the people that they choose to oppress in society. When you look at the book, The Invention of the White Race by Theodore W. Allen, he talks about this very specifically on how this colorized racial classification system was established by these Europeans for the purpose of oppression, specifically for the purpose of oppression. And they're calling themselves white people in order to put themselves at the top of the food chain and to justify, because to them white means God and white means purity. So if you're going to call yourself God and pure and all of these things, it then justifies based on your biblical interpretations and how you see the so-called descendants of Canaan. It justifies how you are able to treat them and keep them in positions of subjugation. So like this man said, the vice president of the Confederacy, he said that those people called Negroes, those of the African race, these people's rightful place is subjugation. That's where you belong, according to God in their eyes, right? According to God, because all of this stuff for them is coming out of their religious text. It's undergirded by their religious text. So when we say that the so-called white man is the devil, all of them, there's no exception. We're talking about an adversary, because the very purpose of calling yourself white and calling me black is to put us at odds with each other.
That's right.
Automatically. That's all I wanted to say, bro. You go in.
Definitely. Brother Josh, you on mute, bro.
Yeah, I got something I was trying to bring up. Hold on, you don't mind me sharing my screen?
Oh, no, go ahead.
All right.
Let's get to it. Like people like Jane Elliott need to understand She talking about land. Land? They took our land. The land that was promised to us was taken. It was taken back. The Compromise of 1877 saw the last little bit of that get stripped away when the protections were removed. The military protection that was ordered by Abraham Lincoln was removed. You can't tell me about land.
Yeah.
They took that from
screen?
us.
Let me know when y'all can see the screen.
Yeah, it's up.
So y'all know we get into Freedman's University, you know, and this is what I will say, you know, to people like Jane Elliott. You know, I understand that, you know, from when you look at things from in terms of whiteness, that it's not in today's America, there's not just white people, quote unquote, and then you know, black folks, and it's not that way like it was maybe in the 60s. It's a lot more groups. But when you're talking about justice and you're talking about things, you know, you're talking about the history, the legacy of of racism in America, you have to root it in white and black. You have to root it in European Americans and the descendants of freedmen. You have to root it in that, because that's what freedmen are pretty much the only group in you know, along with a small percentage of white allies, are the only people that ever fought for civil rights in America prior. I mean, because we were the predominant two groups here. You had the descendants, you had the so-called Negroes, you had European Americans, which included many immigrants that came from Europe, because, you know, they didn't have, who would want to immigrate to slavery in America from Africa or from the Caribbean, and nobody else is really coming over here like that. So pretty much you had Negroes, you had the European Americans, and you had the Native Americans, or the various quote unquote Indian tribes, right? Who groups fighting for civil rights? Which group was behind the Civil Rights Act of 1866? Which group was for behind the 13th Amendment, they were fighting for abolition of slavery? Which groups were fighting for end of racism and talking about education and housing and all these different type of things? Which group was anti-lynching? And then let's also talk about which groups were the groups that were the targeted groups behind these things. Primarily it was Negroes. So you can't talk about people of color, because there wasn't no people of color here. It was Negroes. It was Negroes. The legislation that was on the books that was talking about who couldn't get what, and this, when they were crafting the legislation around the New Deal, they were crafting it to cut out the Negroes, not no Indians, not no Native Americans, not no people of color. They were, when it said, I mean, even though it said you talk about colored people, they were mostly talking about Negroes. Now, yes, it was some people from like, depending on where you were regionally, may have included some what we would call Latinos or Hispanics today. But the numbers of those were vastly lesser than the numbers that we see in America today. So the people who really had to bear the brunt of the horrendous policy were the people that we call Negroes. Now, if you're gonna have these views today, you really need to go back and look at, if you want to, you know, be paraded as a person who is, and like I said, I give you your props on your blue eye, brown eye, and actually advocating on issues, some issues, many of them that affect Black folks today. But if you're going to, you got like to be like a serious person that we give props to, I'm gonna need you to move in the spirit of John Brown. I'm gonna need you to move in the spirit of Thaddeus Stevens, who got his brains beat in with the cane in the Congress for being a radical Republican. And let me show you what Thaddeus Stevens was talking about in the time when we were first seeing Freedman. Let me show you what Thaddeus Stevens was talking about in 1867. So this is a document that you probably have never seen. You probably have never heard of, but it's called HR 29. Now it says Mr. Stevens on leave, introduced on leave. Why was he on leave? Because he got his head cracked. I forget who the congressman was. Somebody remind me. Put it in the chat. They beat his head in. They on the congressional floor beat him in the head with a cane. Beat him on. He was on the ground in the head. He was out of Congress for a minute. So, anyways, on leave, introduced the following bill: a bill relative to damages done to lawyermen and for other purposes, whereas it is due to justice and as an example to future times that some proper punishment should be inflicted on the people who constituted the Confederate States of America, both because they declared an unjust war against the United States for the purposes of destroying Republican liberty and permanently establishing slavery, as well as for the cruel and barbarous manner in which they conducted said war, in violation of all laws of civilized warfare, and also to compel them to make some compensation for the damages and expenditures caused by said war. Therefore, be it enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled, that all public lands belonging to the 10 states that form the government of the so-called Confederate States of America shall be forfeited by said states and become forthwith vested in the United States. And let's go to the next one. This is powerful. Section 2, and be it further enacted that the president shall forthwith proceed to cause the seizure of such of the property belonging to the belligerent enemy as is deemed forfeited by the act of the 17th July AD 1862, and hold and appropriate the same enemy's property, and to proceed condemnation with that already seized. Now, section 3, this is not very long, but it says, and be it further enacted that in lieu of the proceeding to condemn the property thus seized as enemy's property, as it is provided by the act of July 17th AD 1862, 2 commissions or more. Okay, I'm not gonna go too deep in this. 2 commissions or more. Blah 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 blah. Okay, it says by him may be deemed necessary, shall be appointed by the president for each of the said Confederate states to consist of, okay, this is this and that. Let's get down to it. Okay, section 4. This is where it gets interesting, right? And be it further enacted that out of the lands thus seized and confiscated, the slaves who have been liberated by the operations of the war in the amendment to the Constitution, or otherwise who resided in said Confederate States on the 4th day of March AD 1861, since shall have been distributed to them as follows. Okay, check this out. To each male person who is the head of family, 40 acres.
Listen, wait, Josh, hold on, bro. Family, listen, we're gonna do I want you to finish reading though, because we're gonna do a whole separate stream on these acts. Like Danielle Witten said, this is Freedman University here, point blank period. And we're gonna do a whole separate stream on breaking down these Freedman's acts. We have already had powerful legislation here. We must reinstitute the Freedmen's Bureau. Look, go ahead, brother Josh. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah. I know we're going to do a separate stream because this is just one. This is just one of the proposed acts. This was something that, had something we're going to break down. Has different events happened in the past that we would have possibly seen or likely have seen this taking place. And so for the people that just want to talk about Field Order 15, talking about 40 acres and a mule only to the coast of South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and that being it, and we're saying, well, that's not really. They weren't trying to do reparations. Understand what was being talked about in the Congress. All right, so it says they talking about if you were a slave as of 1861, you should have distributed to them as follows, namely, to each male person who is the head of a family, 40 acres. Okay, this is not Field Order 15.
That's right.
This is HR 29 coming
That's
from
right.
Thaddeus Stevens. Okay, 40 acres to each adult male, whether head of family or not, 40 acres. To each widow who is head of the family, 40 acres. To be held by them in fee simple, but to be inalienable for the next 10 years after they have become seized thereof, for the purposes of distributing and allotting said land. The Secretary of War shall appoint as many commissioners in state as he shall deem necessary, consists of 3 members, blah, 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 blah. Basically, what they're saying in this thing is, all right, I guess I'll just go through it.
Yeah, there's some more powerful stuff in there,
Yeah,
John. I was getting ready to say, man.
I can't leave it out. All right. Yeah. So the Secretary of War shall appoint as many commissions in each state as he shall deem necessary, to consist of 3 members each, 2 of whom at least shall not be citizens of the state for which he is appointed. Each of said commissioners shall receive a salary of $3,000 annually and all his necessary expenses. Each commissioner shall be allowed 1 clerk whose salary shall be $2,000 per annum, and the title to the homestead aforesaid shall be vested in trustees for the use of liberated persons aforesaid. Trustees shall be appointed by the Secretary of War and shall receive such a salary as he shall direct, not exceeding $3,000 a year. At the end of 10 years, the absolute title to the said homestead shall be conveyed to said owners or to their heirs as such. So basically, you holding it. After 10 years, it's yours. It's your land. Okay, so it says, Section 5, be it further enacted that out of the balance of the property thus seized and confiscated, there shall be raised in a manner hereafter provided a sum equal to $50 for each homestead, and to be applied by the trustees hereinafter mentioned toward the erection of buildings on the said homesteads for the use of said slaves. So basically, not only were they giving you 40 acres, they were going to give you a house. They talking about erection of buildings. They talking about a house or some type of shed or something. You get to use that to erect buildings on the 40 acres. Let's keep going. And you want me to keep going, or you want me to cut it off?
I think that I guess that's all right, man. Look, they know where to go. It's HR. Give them the thing again. HR 29. I enjoy the information, bro.
I'm just gonna summarize it.
All right, yeah, just summarize it real quick, Josh. I really want us. I want us to do a deep dive into these acts, man. I really want to dedicate the time that we need. I'm talking about from beginning to end, so that we can break these things down, because I believe that it requires us to look at them in whole. Right now, we're speaking in relation to the thing that we were promised and never received, right? But if we look at them through the scope of this is what we need to be doing as the descendants of Freedman and the resurrection of these acts, we can put that energy into it. But yeah, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, so just because not to belabor it, because you know how we do. We get into the information. So I don't want to read all of this because I know it's late and people holding on. But I'm just gonna summarize it. Basically, they was talking about giving our ancestors 40 acres.
Listen up, family.
They was giving us $50 in cash to build buildings or like a house or something on the 40 acres. They were going to take $500 million in 1867 money and take 200 million of it and put it into basically says securities and give you 6% interest of it, and they were going to pay you twice a year into a pension. So they were talking about a pension you would get a pension for reparations from the interest of that $200 million, and then they take the other 300 million and just pay out straight damages. And the former Confederates, they were going to give some of them the chance to get their money back. I think they gave them 60 days or 90 days. They were going to put it in all the newspapers daily. If after that 60 days or 30, whatever it was, I think it was 60 days. If they didn't pay, they would have to buy their land back. If they didn't buy the land back, it was done. They forfeited the land. See, this was what should have happened right here.
You see Cynthia comment?
Nah. Let me stop the share.
It's on the screen. She said this is what Callie House was advocating for. And see, that's why I said we want to do a real deep dive.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into
you see, because then we get to the guy. What was his name? Thomas Vaughn? Was it Thomas Vaughn?
No, I think it was
something Vaughn.
Yeah.
Vaughn, and then from Vaughn, we get to Callie House, right? The real mother of reparations, not Audley Moore, right? So one day we're gonna do like a really, really deep dive into that, and I can't wait. Again, this is Freedman University, aka Free U. One of the things that we do have right now is the Freedman University caps for sale. We have sweaters for those that are still in the northern areas. We're still a little chilly at, and we have the t-shirts coming as well. We are trying to do a Juneteenth celebration in Atlanta, a 2-day Freedmen's Festival. We're setting up to have a rally at the Capitol on June 18th. We're going to put more information out as well, but we're setting up to have a reparations rally June 18th at the Capitol building in Atlanta. And then the very next day on Juneteenth, we are trying to get a Freedmen's Festival going. And I'm talking about we trying to have either a live band or a DJ or both. Have the live bands come through and then have a DJ finish it out. I mean, we're trying to do it up, family, and then we want the night to culminate with fireworks, man. So, because we're going to treat Juneteenth as our 4th of July. So, we definitely, Dan, we got the Freedman merch popping right now. So it's time for us to get busy. It's time for us to take our brand to another level because it represents our ancestry. And that's why, we want to do, I don't know. I think, Josh, what you think, man? I think we should do before the end of this week. I really think that we should go over those bills, man. What is it? HR 29, HR 512, I believe is the other one. And I believe the other is 129.
It's like one of them is HR 650, HR 51 or something like that. HR 61, something like. It's a bunch. It's a bunch.
I done read a couple of them.
Yeah, it's a bunch of these. It's a bunch of them. But it's not only I like reading the ones that not only were passed, but the ones that were proposed, because it shows you what people had in mind, what they knew that they needed to do to make recompense, or at least try to make some attempt for recompense. And it shows you what may have been if Reconstruction was not overthrown, if they didn't pop Abraham Lincoln in the skull, blow his brains out, and if provisional governors were not instituted, that were former Confederates were not given amnesty. If all of these things were, if all these a lot of the other acts that were proposed weren't vetoed by Andrew Johnson, and it's amazing to think that two-thirds of Congress even voted to get a lot of these things passed. But if you think about all that would have been or could have been if not certain things happened, and you go back and read the legislation that even was just proposed, not even it just passed. It just goes to show you the mentality of the even the white folks at the time. And you don't get to parade yourself as a person. Oh, they speak. No, there are real people who was killed, who got their head beaten and their brains blown out, that was hanged for trying to advocate for our justice. So you doing this little stuff on social media and you get to be paraded around. That's not good enough when we talking about, you know, doing what's necessary, because obviously you're not going to get hanged and all that stuff today. So you can't even come out and fight for our, help be an ally to our justice in these days and times. Come on now.
Yeah, and that's why I say, man, you know, and I want to share one more thing before we get up out of here. You know, Ali definitely come back in, but I want to share these graphs. See if I have them up already. I do. I want to share some
I just want
graphs.
to say one more thing, brother, and then I'm
okay, go ahead, bro.
I just want to say this too, like another thing, because obviously this message is we're talking about Jane, Elliott, and other people that may be future allies to the movement for reparations for the descendants of Freedman. You know, there's also a selfish reason that you should be interested in us getting reparations. You know, if you look at that study that came out by Citibank, I think it said since the year 2000, the American economy has been costed $16 trillion that's how much the economy has lost because of systemic racism. So don't you think that us having our expertise and our creativity and if we were given capital, we would make some of these things into large enterprises where you could be investors in, or you can go ahead and buy shares in and increase your wealth portfolio. See, all of these things, you denying us justice. You just denied your wealth from going up even more. You know, you talk about 16 trillion. See, look at you. You know, that's what you got to keep in mind. It's not just we're not talking about white guilt. We're talking about doing justice, and doing justice by us is good for America, because where are we going to spend our money at? We're not going to take it to Africa for the most part. We're not going to take it to Cuba. We're not going to take it to the Caribbean or Europe, and we're going to keep it in America. We're going to keep it in America. We're going to build up American institutions, because we're Americans. This is all we know. This is who we are.
That's
so
right.
You got to understand that.
That's right. So I want to share these graphs real quick. This was a report that was published by Bloomberg. This is from a report published by Bloomberg a couple of months ago. They had several graphs that they shared about racial disparities. And if you look, the purple represents white people. Green represents other. Black or dark gray represents Hispanic. The blue represents black people. It's trillions of dollars, right? This graph is being measured in trillions of dollars. Financial disparity, net worth by race and ethnicity since the late 1980s. And it goes from 1989 all the way to the year 2020. The whole time, Black Americans are at the bottom. If you looked at this graph as as weight, right, we would see that the purple obviously is the heaviest weight. It is the wealth of white America. The wealth of others comes next. No other people should have more wealth than Black Americans. None. Zero. We built the country for free. We are America's day one citizens. We've never rebelled against the United States of America like the Southern rebels did.
Like the Indians have in
like
different instances.
Like the Indians done did.
Yeah.
Then you got
Well,
black.
then some will say that you had certain blacks who escaped from slavery that went to war with the United States during the so-called Seminole Wars, I believe. It was them and some of the Native Americans in Florida who were fighting against one of these generals from the United States, and the guy said it was definitely not an Indian war, but a Negro war. So you might have some who would raise that. I just wanted to throw that out there so
it's
people
all
don't
good.
think.
It's all good. I mean, at the end of the day, the history is clear. So I mean, but
those were former slaves. They were really
that's
fighting
right.
for their own freedom.
That's
That's
right.
all that was.
That's right.
Go ahead.
And this graph shows that Black Americans are at the bottom. Like everybody is piled on top of us. That, to me, that's what this graph clearly highlights. That this blue strip all the way at the bottom is us. And everybody else is piled up on top of us. We are the bottom. We are the floor. We are the tiling of the United States of America. Period. You know, I want to go to another one of these graphs. The home ownership gap. Let's blow this up a little bit. Again, the black line is non-Hispanic white alone. The blue line, which comes next, is other. The yellow line is Hispanic of any race. And that neon pinkish line is black alone. From 1994, we see there was a period where the home ownership gap among black people, naturally, because we've been here for so damn long, we were actually a little above the Hispanic race for a period of several years. Then there's this dip. And then there's a back and forth a little bit. And then we maintain this position. Then there's a dip where the Spanish where they go ahead. Then we cut. So there's this back and forth. If you really look at this graph, you come back around here. I can guess that this may be around the year 2000, maybe in the late 90s. I'm not sure, where we have this gap again between black home ownership, which is black alone, is the neon pinkish red line, and the Hispanic is this mustard yellow line, right? Then something drastic happens. It's like a race in racism. The Hispanics take the lead, and they never, ever lose this lead on us again. Not only do they never lose the lead, we drop further and further behind. Like this is a real thing. Jane Elliott can speak about what what Native American needs until she is blue, literally blue in the face, literally blue in the face. But the numbers do not lie. The numbers just do not lie. And I wanted to share several of those graphs from Bloomberg because we need to understand what it is that we are dealing with here. We are dealing with systemic oppression, which has lasted in the United States of America for generations after generation. Once we get out of slavery, face some of the worst oppressive conditions in human history by one of, and when I say one of, I mean the racist white of America, the most wicked human to ever step 2 feet upon this planet that we call Earth. So no one like Jane Elliott should, in any capacity, feel that they should be in a position to tell us anything and then say to us, this is how it is. My opinion is what it is. Black Americans shouldn't get anything.
Right.
Is what she basically said. Yeah, go ahead, Brother Ali.
Basically. Yeah, basically that's exactly what she's saying. And we're kind of reiterating, we said it already. And at the end of the day, what we're looking at is a problem with this paternalistic nonsense that these people seem to feel they have the right to take these kinds of positions. You know, Europeans feel that they have the right to tell black people what to do, when to do it, what not to do, what to say, what to think, how to think, what not to think. That they really feel like that's their position in this country. That's what they're supposed to be doing, right? And so it's like it's real paternalistic nonsense. And so I think too, that's one thing. The other thing is they believe that white people will have to pay this reparations thing that we keep talking about out of their pockets. Like this is the approach of many Europeans in this country, is that we're somehow going to have to pay this thing out of our pocket, and so the country can't afford it. This is going to bankrupt the country. Why should I have to do this when I'm really an immigrant? Because a lot of them, this is what a lot of them are implying without actually saying, is that they're really immigrants and they didn't have anything to do. Like for instance, they're not foundational white Americans. So these are people who came through Ellis Island and all this kind of stuff, right? And so they don't want to say that because they don't want to feel like, yo, I'm less of an American than these black people, but I still want to pretend that I'm some kind of white person. And so I'm going to act like, you know, that I have this lineage that really goes back to early America when I really don't. But it's a whole bunch of nonsense that's going on, right? And so this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with all of this stuff, paternalism. We're dealing with the fact that we're talking most of the time to the white people that we're talking to are actually immigrants, man. These are people that really don't have no long lineage in this country anyway.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. That's right. I mean, Brother Josh.
Nah, man. I mean, y'all said it all. Y'all said it all, man. You know, we're gonna need. We live in a country where we're 13% of the population, and our history in America of getting policy that really transformed us included having to get help from what we would call so-called white people or European Americans. So,
and Josh, break it down for white folks that may be listening. How would this thing be paid for? How would it be paid for? And what kind of money would it look like in terms of the families who qualify based on Darity's criterion? What kind of money we looking at, and how would it be funded? Will they have to come out their pockets, pay it in taxes? How would this work?
Hold on a second. Got some background noise. Let me get rid of that. So, all right. So this thing, I think a lot of people are fearful of some type of, because again, it's predicated on, this thing has been predicated on white guilt, and we're not talking about a matter of individual guilt. We're talking about, as Dr. Darity said in his book so eloquently, it's not a matter of individual guilt, it's a matter of national responsibility. You know, in the same way it's a matter of national responsibility to make amends for Japanese Americans, for the not the Holocaust, but the internment of their people during the World War II times. In the same way, it was a national responsibility to make amends for the atrocities that occurred in Guam, for which America paid reparations for under President Obama. In the same way, it was a national responsibility to, or at least America felt it was a national responsibility to pay additional reparations on top of what France paid to America to pay to the Jewish American Holocaust descendants. In addition to the national responsibility that America held to compensate the victims of the September 11th attacks to the tune of over $7 billion into that fund, right? These things did not require a fish fry or any type of fundraiser. It didn't require donations. It didn't require an additional tax, you know, that usually you didn't look at your paychecks and see reparations tax, you know, coming out your paycheck. It didn't require private corporations to be a tax to be placed on wealth. It didn't require private corporations to have to pay money out of their bottom line or out of their assets. It didn't require anybody to withdraw anything from their checking account or their savings account or liquidating lands or liquidating funds. It didn't require any of that. You know what it required? It required votes. It required votes, and it required the United States Treasury through its fiscal agent, the Federal Reserve, to issue the funds to the program that the Congress decided to institute, and the program was carried out, and those reparations payments were paid to, the individuals. So what we're talking about and what we're asking as a baseline is, if we're Americans, if we are America's original sin from the original time when America was first founded, 1776, when our people who are, I got family members who tell me about, they have people who fought and received Revolutionary War pensions as free Negroes. But I also have family members whose ancestors were enslaved during the time of the Revolutionary War and didn't get emancipated through the lineage until after the Civil War was over. So if we're talking about that, then if we've been foundation to America, then our wealth should be, if we've been here just as long as let me say this too. Just because you get to be white over here in America doesn't mean that you descend from the people whose families paid the cost and who built America like our families did. A lot of people who classify white, they might have just came over here 1 or 2 generations ago, just like the president number 45, So when we're talking about the contribution to America, our wealth should at least be on par with white Americans' wealth. I mean, we put in the work, uncompensated. Right. We put in the work, and not only did we contribute our labor, we contributed our bodies. We contributed our creativity. To innovate America. We contributed all of that. So our wealth should at least be on par with white wealth. So we're talking about, if we're saying our wealth should be on par with white wealth, because what you saying you're inferior? I mean, you're superior, and we reject that. We're at the end of the day as humans. So at minimum, our wealth should be on par with white wealth. So if that's the case, we're talking about, if the average white household is worth over $950,000 and the average black household is worth $100,000, then we should have the average black household receiving $850,000. That translates to about $267,000 to $300,000 a person.
That's right.
Now that's what we're talking about. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Putting black as a baseline, as a minimum. We're not talking about making the minimums the maximum, but as a minimum, we need to have each black household receive $850,000 in direct payments. And whether we can decide on what's the best course of that, and what other programs we need to institute, because this happened over the course of generations. So even reparations is not going to be made we're not going all the way even with that, but we're going to talk about as a baseline. That's what we're looking for. And now again, that's not going to be paid through no taxation, because your tax dollars does not fund a single thing on the federal level.
That's right.
You know what funds everything on the federal level? The Federal Reserve. Every single dollar that is spent is a new dollar. Your taxes only go to take money back out of the circulation to mitigate inflationary for inflationary reasons, and to stimulate people to want to produce. Like, if you were never taxed, you wouldn't feel the need that I need to go and work and spend. Right. You need to make more money. These are just basic economic understandings that people that are at the highest levels of this thing understand, that the majority of the people have been duped into, because you look at U.S. federal economics like you do home economics, but they don't work the same way.
And you see,
Look at that.
What I have up. That article, Treasury to invest $9 billion in minority communities. And we know when they say minority communities, we're going to get the crumbs off the cake.
Can I give y'all a
as
personal
usual.
example? A personal example that I have a good friend of mine who, by the way, is a black immigrant, and he's a true ally. But he was telling me he was complaining because in the city of Baltimore, it was a large construction project that they were looking to do dealing with like the sewer system. And he noticed that the people that were getting the contracts, it was supposed to be minority contracts. But he looked at like out of 30 something people who received contracts, I think in Baltimore. Okay, y'all, somebody that's familiar with Baltimore, tell me what the percentage of Baltimore, that's black. But at Baltimore, and this was several years ago when it was less gentrification, I think it was like 27 out of the 30 was Indian Americans that received. They were not black American descendants of slavery, descendants of freedom. This was like this, something like that. Yeah. Look at Baltimore, 62% black. And again, this was years ago. So this is when it was probably the population was higher than that. It might have been, I don't know what the population was in the early 2000s, but yeah, when they were doing a large sewer project, rerouting the sewer, because this is a situation where it was getting overloaded and it was backing up. The sewage water was backing up into the water, supply and all of that. They were doing that, and the contractors that were getting it was the vast majority of them were not black. He was like, "How does this happen in a majority black city? They got a black mayor and got all this kind of stuff, and you're trying to figure out how come we not getting contracts?" It's because that contract says minority. So a minority includes all these other groups. It does, but the spirit of that is meant to include us. It's not meant to just be for every other group and then we go look at for example, Asian, Indian, or Indian Americans. And this is no knock against them. I mean, if I were them, I'd be doing the same thing. But this is just showing how the system is not being specific enough for us. And while we're supposed to have a specific designation that allows these things to be put in place to right the wrongs that were done. But if you're minority is not good enough. It needs to be a specific designation for those people who descend from those who were harmed and held back and that are supremely disadvantaged today.
You know what people like Biden is going to say? I made sure that minority businesses receive $9 billion. Minority businesses. So can't nobody tell me that I didn't do anything for black people. And we got to be able to call these people on that, period.
That's how you flip that language, bro.
Mm-hmm.
It's the sad part is that, they're able to use these terminologies interchangeably, and too many of us have not caught on to it yet. We were fortunate enough to be able to have been put on to the game that's being played. It's a con, right? It is a con game, man. It's a con game, right? We've been put on to that, but a lot of our people don't understand exactly what's going on. So I still see a lot of our folks using people of color and minorities and all of this kind of stuff. Even some people trying to adopt the term BIPOC. It's bad because they don't understand how these things are being used to erase us or to cover up our plight, and then they use our plight in order to be able to legislate on behalf of these other people in this whole group thing. Like somebody, I don't know if I think it was Tariq Nasheed. He says we're gonna group all these people together as one big nigga, right? It's one big nigga, and and we're just gonna do for all of them this you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, yo, that's funny, but yeah, he's on point. He was on point with that. Free you, y'all. Free you. Cop them. I need the black. I need the red. I want every color.
Hit me up, family. Send me an email, lordabba@gmail.com. Hit me up on any platform that you are connected with me on. Let's build. Again, we are trying to put the Freedman Festival together for Juneteenth. We are trying to make this one of the most major events in the country through our nonprofit, the United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen. We are a legitimate 501c3. If you would like to become a member of our organization, if you would like to help run the United Sons and Daughter of Freedmen chapter in your locale, hit us up. It's time to build. It's work enough for all of us to do. And most of us are in alignment on a great many deal of things, particularly politically, ideologically. I think I said all of that wrong, but y'all know what I mean. So hit us up, fam. Let's build. It's time to, it's time for us to really make some things happen. And I think that the ancestors are blessing us right now. I keep saying this when I'm on Clubhouse. I always say it as well. I really feel like the ancestors, our ancestors, are putting some wind beneath our wings. Ella J. Dotson said, "Can you do some more feminist style hats? Those are very masculine." I think when you look at them, sis, I'll say this. That these particular hats, I believe, are unisex. I was like, I would want me as a masculine man, I would want a more fitted, like the hat I got on, I would want a more fitted style cap. So when I looked at these and I tried it on, I was like, yeah, I think the sisters can wear these as well. So, you would have to see them, but I feel what you're saying. And I want to get some pink ones, and I know pink is not just a sister's color, but I do want to get some pink and purple as well. I think the next batch, though, I may mix it up. I may just get the fitted style caps in this brand, and then get the pink and purple and probably white and keep in this particular style of cap right here. Again, hit me up. Now, she said, you can't see it from the picture, Sister Ella J. Like, my brim on my fitted is wide. This is like how I like to wear my hat. The brim on these hats is not the way I like to wear my hat. I just got to be honest. That is not my style of cap right there. This is my style cap right here. So I think that these are definitely unisex. I do believe that. Oh, I got you, Sister Sin. I got you. Peace to Brother Shannon in the building, Black Watch. Shout out.
Peace to Brother Shannon.
Shout out to everybody that's in. Everybody that's in the building, man.
The book club.
Oh, yes, March 31st. Family, get the book. Make sure y'all get that book, The Devil You Know, by Charles M. Blow, because that will be the next book club that we do. Or our first book club, I should say. That will be the first book club that we do, The Devil You Know. I believe that book is powerful. I believe that it's powerful. Let me see if I can pull up the... I can't find it. Okay, there it is. I believe that book is a very powerful read. That strategy in and of itself is one of the best strategies coming from the least likeliest of source that I've ever seen. I don't know why it's flashing like that. Can y'all see that?
Yeah, it's flashing for me.
It says devil. That's why,
that's what it is. That's interesting. Or maybe that's the book getting a proper highlight. This Thursday, family, we have the legendary Judge Joe Brown coming on. We are going to be conducting an interview with the brother. We are going to have Sister Connie. Some of you may not be familiar with her, but she has definitely been a major part of the movement when it was ADOS out in California, in Los Angeles. We're going to have Sister Cynthia on. We're going to actually have a rotation of the sisters coming on at the least once a week. I would like 2 times a week, you know, so that because we need that sisterly energy in the building as well, right? So, you know, we have a powerful lineup coming up. We have a lot of things in the works right now, and you know, it's time to get busy. It's really time to get busy. Sister Cynthia cracked the joke. BTP Media Group. What? You are an actual 501c3 that can be found and not a shadow organization. Who would have thunk it? You see what I'm saying, right? So because that's real. And that's the way that you're supposed to operate, particularly in today's day and time. You want to make sure that you're available to do for the people. We don't do greed and avarice over here. And there are some people who are like, it's like planting a seed in the desert. No matter how much rain falls on those sands, the only thing that's going to happen is that the sand is going to absorb all the water. The seed will get very little of it. And its life cycle trying to grow in the sand will be shortened. So, you know, I'm excited. I'm really excited. Shout out to Sister Roz. Shout out to Sister Cass. They in the background doing great work. We got a lot of things moving right now, man, and we will be successful. The ancestors riding with us, the people riding with us, and we ride with y'all. Period.
That's right.
We riding with y'all. So, you know, bros, y'all have any closing statements y'all want to give before we get up out of here?
Yeah, I'll say peace to the family. I thank everybody who tuned in and who rides with us. One love. Y'all know I always say one love. I got that from my big brother Jalil Houdini. You know what I'm saying? One love to the brother X. Love you forever. You know what I mean? And so thank you again, everybody, for tuning in with us. We see y'all next time. Peace.
Brother Josh.
Oh man. You know, one more thing that I noticed, especially in the passing of this bill that I think Biden signed into law recently, and that Lindsey Graham was complaining about, and they were talking about with Clyburn. And it's a terminology that I think we need to investigate, family. We need to look into. Maybe we'll talk about it on the future program, but in the meantime, I would like everybody to just get familiar with this, because it may be the next problematic terminology in terms of to the likes of the people of color, minorities, and of that nature. And that term is disadvantaged group or historically disadvantaged group. It's another way to hint at us, but leave the door open for other people to access it. And maybe it's more refined because, you know, not every group has a historic context in here. But if you read the definition of this term, and I would just tell anybody, and I give props to Sister Cynthia, who actually put the link for that new piece of legislation in a group that we were in, and I was reading it. I was like, oh, what is this justification they get to use this disadvantaged group, and it's economically or historically disadvantaged group? What's the justification of that? So I started digging. I'm like, and then you read it, and it's problematic. So I'm not saying that it needs to all the way get thrown in the trash, but I will say that it's something we definitely need to put as our a homework assignment so we can get to the bottom of it. And with that, other than that, y'all, I just want to say I appreciate everybody out there for fighting as a reparationist, for taking the time to spend with us to grow and learn and build on what we have to share. And I appreciate every one of y'all. Peace and love.
Indeed, indeed. Jane Elliott, this message is to you. This message is to you, Jane Elliott. You are officially canceled. Your stance on reparations is extremely problematic. It is extremely white supremacist. It is extremely white paternalistic. You don't have the right to speak anymore on our issues. You have lost that privilege, and you knew it when you said to those brothers, I'm probably going to lose most of your Black audience, because you know most Black people in the United States of America are suffering. You know that. It's over for you. Anybody else that's talking against our reparations claim while pretending to be fighting for our freedom. We didn't even get to the part about Tamika Mallory and how she got roasted by Tamir Rice's mother. But we're going to get to that on another stream, because I think that it's important that we start calling out what Dr. John Henrik Clarke called showbiz liberation. Never hear people like my son speak about reparations. I'll be wondering if these people are immigrants. I went to the movies this weekend with my children, masked up, of course, to see the movie Boogie. And in the movie Boogie, there was an Asian guy who acted Black, his family. There was his girlfriend who was a Trinidadian. His best friend was a Dominican, light-skinned Dominican. You know, they make distinctions out there. Light-skinned and dark-skinned Dominicans. They like to make those distinctions. Then you have Pop Smoke, who was in the movie. A movie that he was filming when his life got cut short, who's half Panamanian and half Jamaican, right? A good movie. My children loved it. But it reflects what's going on in New York City, which is also reflective in what Charles Blow is saying in his book, The Devil You Know. And when we do this book club, I'm going to thoroughly break that aspect down, because we are being systematically replaced. We are the Black people that's native to the United States of America, the descendants of the freedmen. Oh, well, they're in the prisons. Largest prison population in the world. Our men. We're in the prisons. That means something. And people like Jane Elliott has no answers for that. So run along with your brown eye, blue eye test. At this point, everything you have done has been disqualified. Now, leave y'all with the motto of this platform, which is don't just fight the power, become the power. And then and only then will you have the power to make a change. And with that, I say peace.